Hey guys, I want to show you just a couple more things. There's this matter of doing the tiles on the floor or the ceiling. I'm going to do it on the floor right now. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to measure this out. So the tiles, every row of tiles is the same. Oh, for Pete's sake. This floor is 13 inches right down here at this point. I don't think I'm smart enough to divide that because I want to have it at least 2 inches here. It's going to get small enough. So I'm just going to move up here until I hit 12 inches, which really isn't far, is it? I'm going to make sure that I'm parallel still by leaving my mark on that line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to measure every 2 inches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And now I know when I run my receding lines through each one of these, it's going to be an even space. So I'll do it like this. I'm not going to run my line, my vanishing point, all the way back to the vanishing point here, but notice that my ruler still goes back to the vanishing point. I want to make sure that each one of my lines is receding to that vanishing point. So what I do is I make sure my ruler is on the vanishing point and that portion of the line. See, so each of these are receding in the same manner back to the vanishing point. I can hold my pencil on the mark I just made and then rotate this until my ruler is on the vanishing point. And then I can exclaim huzzah or bing bada boom as I draw my line. Huzzah. You got to feel it. You got to be in it. You know what I mean? And so, if you do sound effects, there's no way to draw with sound effects and not be happy. The decision I have to make right now is how big is this first square going to be? My first tile. All right. You know what? If we're going to do this, I talked about the OCD of dividing this paper perfectly. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the OCD way of dividing up this this floor. I'm going from one corner of the floor, right where it meets the wall out here, where it intersects, back to here, where this back corner of the room, or what represents that back corner of the room, I'm going to draw a line across that. I'm going to draw the line dark right now, although if I was actually doing this, I would draw it lightly so that I could erase it more easily. Now notice that each place where this bisects, or rather intersects one of these lines is going to be where a tile line is. Now the reason for this is that as any objects recede in space, that is, they get farther away from us, they get smaller. And the way that we draw these lines receding, going back this way, it's obviously already becoming smaller, but we also want each one of these squares to become a little bit shorter. And in this method, each one of them does that. So what I'm doing is I'm placing the line directly on that intersection, and I'm rotating my ruler until boy, that doesn't look straight, does it? Did I get off somehow? Oh, I did. Oh, I know what happened. This line was not straight, and so I lined it up at both points right there. It was just because of the position of my pencil. Just always be sure that you're not holding your pencil at different angles when you're doing this. I'm going to try that next one again because it just seems a little bit off. So once again, I want it to be right up where that intersection is, but now I want this line to be more consistent. I think this one's a little bit better. And so you see, I was only very slightly off, just a hair off on one side. I'm doing it again. I'm going to this intersection. Huzzah, bam. Put, bleh. Oh, what's happening? Okay. I have that line lined up right there. Now, one thing I do is, you notice I always keep my pencil on the mark where I want it to go, because remember, the pencil thickness makes a difference. And so now I know when I get this lined up right here with the last line, that when I draw this pencil, it's going to be right through that intersection. Pow! So that's how we make our tiled floors. So if I wanted to do a checkerboard floor, I would just start shading every other one. First off, I could erase these. I could erase all of these diagonals, or that diagonal, because we don't need that anymore. Now sometimes, if you have a really large space, you may do a diagonal and it doesn't make it all the way to the end. In that case, all you have to do is do this again. I could do a diagonal up to here. If this floor was still continuing back, I could just do another diagonal across some of these and it would still recede those in the same manner. While I have you here, here's a little thing that I saw when people were doing their like we talk about fluorescent lights up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this again. I'm going to draw a light line across here so I know where this is, but just like the other one, I want to be able to measure. What am I doing here? And basically, I think I can throw this anywhere on the wall that I want. I probably should have measured this first. Okay, that's 11.5, so I know that halfway across this is 5 3/4, yes? So that's my halfway point. I'm simply going to rotate this. I'm going to do a thing like this. I want to have each of these be, you know what, 2 inches is going to be too big. So I'm just going to do 1.5 inches. That's 3/4 off each side here. If I then do a 3/4 break between them and then can I still do 1.5 inches? Bam. Okay, so I'm going to do a 3/4 space here. Huzzah. And then go 1.5 inches there. Now, it's cool if you move your ruler around to do this, if you're more comfortable measuring 1.5 inches between those big lines, and then you want to measure, 3/4 to one of the little lines, then reposition this to do your next 1.5 inches. So here's what I'm doing. I want to draw these rectangles, and I think that I want to make them, why don't we make them all the same thickness? So what I'm doing is I want these to be all consistent, because when you hired that guy to remodel your house, unless he was that crazy uncle that none of us talk about, he's going to get all of those lights at the same place, and they're all going to look the same. So what I'm doing is I'm just drawing each one of these. I'm making a equal rectangles on each of these. And what I mean by that is that I want each one of these rectangles to be equal, and I want them equally spaced. There's the top. I had drawn light marks there because it was easiest for me if I had the if I had those guidelines before I did this. See how each one of these rectangles is pretty close to the same size? I mean, I know my ruler was a little crooked and it's a little off. I'm going to try not to be too OCD on that. Now, I will draw a receding line from each of these. I just want them to sit on the top of the ceiling so I don't have to bring them all the way off. Now, I can still see this one, so I do that. But remember what happens when we have a line directly above the vanishing point or directly on the horizon line. We'll only be able to see two sides of this rectangle. This one we can see 1, 2, 3 sides of it, and it should be the same thing with this one over here. We'll be able to see 3 sides of this one. Now remember, even though I'm not drawing these lines all the way back, I should make it clear, I'm always going to the vanishing point. So my rectangle that I drew, I tried to make it absolutely horizontal and a good vertical. So vertical lines and horizontals, but then these lines, the ones going away from us, have to each recede to that vanishing point. And once you're really trained, I swear you can see that, you'll be able to see the mistakes from across the room. What I'm doing here is I've laid this out so that it's going to be parallel with the front, and now I just made each one of these so that they would end in the same spot or they would be the same distance. This back side here has to be parallel with the front, so I can hold my pencil onto that. That looks good. I am using some of these other verticals here to make sure that that one is correct. Now we'll do the same thing for this. I'm going to go right to this mark. I can use perhaps that vertical. Let me see how it is with this one. Oh, I'm going to straighten it a little bit with the wall. I trust the wall more than my little line up there. Now, bing bada boom, I can erase this. We have these fabulous fluorescent light fixtures, or what used to be fluorescent lights. Now I think they have LED strips. They still make your eyes flash at the end of the day. Some of us. Cool jewels.